Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another tropical update here by Agent of the Forecast. And we have a ton of updates. Grace has now become a hurricane, and it looks like it can very well become a very big threat for portions of Yucatan as well overall portions of southern Mexico, off the Bay of Campeche coast there. As well, Henri is really strengthening now a 70-mile-an-hour tropical storm and likely to become a very strong 90-mile-an-hour Category 1. And as well, it's possibly going to be a threat for the Northeast. I know that sounds really crazy, but due to the thing really getting a lot stronger with the overall ridge impacting the steering pattern, this thing could very well turn towards the north west and possibly hit New England or the Northeast. So that's exactly why we're keeping it very, very close on Henri, because there has been a lot of western shift as it has gone a ton of strength and surpassed its forecasted peak. So it's definitely going to be very interesting here. So we have two areas to watch: the Northeast United States and portions of Mexico, including the Yucatan as well portions there off Campeche. But before we get into the video, I would recommend you guys subscribe to the channel, smash that like button, so I know you guys like videos like these, and so we can get it on the algorithm as well. Be sure to hit that bell icon so you guys get notified as soon as I post a video. But let's go ahead and get to the forecast. So there's Fred as a post-tropical system there, remnants there burning from severe weather, a slight risk of severe weather up across the mid-Atlantic in that general region. And look at Grace now, an 80-mile-an-hour hurricane. So it actually wasn't even a hurricane earlier today. I believe it wasn't a hurricane until, was it 5 or 8 a.m.? I'm not exactly sure. No, I think it became a hurricane at the 11 a.m. update, and now it's already an 80-mile-an-hour hurricane going over these very warm waters at a west-northwest uh, direction and going at 16 miles an hour, and pressure is quite low at 992 millibars, which is not shabby considering it is an 80-mile-an-hour system. And then Henri right behind it, a 70-mile-an-hour system here. A very good tropical storm already bringing in a pretty large wind field. And as well, pressure is not too far off as well compared to Grace, 995 millibars, and going west at 9 miles an hour. So it's starting to pick up a pace a little bit. So let's actually get a look at the discussion at the 5 o'clock advisory for Grace here. So there we have a peak forecast of only 85. However, I think that will increase. I wouldn't doubt this does become 85 or maybe even 90 mile an hour before Yucatan, because obviously there is still a chance it could very well become slightly stronger than expected, and that obviously will kind of keep it towards 90 miles an hour. So hurricane conditions are in a dangerous storm surge are expected in portions of the hurricane warning area in eastern Yucatan. So we're looking at quote unquote dangerous storm surge in eastern Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico beginning late tonight or early Thursday. Preparations protect life and property should be rushed to completion or um completion. So if you are in the eastern Yucatan Peninsula, I recommend you guys evacuate if possible, because this could very well become maybe. There's a slight chance, but it could possibly maybe become a Category 2 before a landfall, which still is not very likely. However, we just can't rule out the possibility because it's only 10 miles an hour away from that, basically. There's an increasing risk of hurricane condition and dangerous storm surge in portions of the eastern mainland Mexico beginning late Friday, and a hurricane watch will likely be issued for parts of this area tonight. So possibly by either 8 or 11 o'clock, we could see a hurricane watch is being extended and issued across the Mexico Peninsula. And through the weekend, heavy rainfall across the Cayman Islands as well as portions of the Yucatan Peninsula and Veracruz State should be led to flash and urban flooding. In addition, the heavy rainfall from Grace will be capable of producing mudslides in Veracruz. So as well, watching out for mudslides. So really going to be a pretty interesting storm here. So Ragged Eye appeared for a while on satellite imagery, but it has recently been observed by cumulonimbus tops. Basically, it's kind of been, I guess, covered basically by the cloud, cloud cover and convection there. The overall cloud pattern has been maintaining its organization with some convective banding features and very cold cloud tops, mainly over the eastern portion of the circulation. It looks like we kind of have a very good CDO there. The current intensity estimated 70 knots here, which is a blend of the Dvorak estimates from CFB and SAB. Under Air Force Reserve is on. So we actually, at this point, I believe it's kind of, I'm not sure exactly where it is, but I think it's about to get very close to the actual system. But let's now get a look here at the Henri discussion here. Oops, I clicked on the wrong thing. Let's go back. So let's go into Henri and see what they have for the discussion. And they have a peak of 90 miles an hour. For some reason, I mean, obviously it's very reasonable that it could get to this strength, but they have it at a larger, stronger peak than Grace. So looking at the forecast track of Henri has shifted towards the northeast coast of the United States this week and early next week, increasing of risk of direct storm surge wind and rain impacts in portions of the northeast U.S. and Atlantic Canada during the time. So there's an increasing chance there and an increasing concern. Obviously, we have New York City there, Long Island, Hartford, Connecticut, Boston, Newport. We have a lot of big cities that have to keep a very close eye on this. The main threat that will probably be more from Massachusetts, considering the northeast quadrant. But New York City could still see some pretty significant flooding overall, and there is still time this could very well push more westward if this storm verifies, and if it actually maybe gets slightly stronger than expected, it could very well become a pretty big threat for New York City here. But let's see here. Interest in these areas should closely follow the progress of Henri and check for updates to the forecast. So there's a really good chance it could very well impact maybe further westward or into maybe the eastern or westward portion of Long Island. Swells from Henri will begin to reach much of the east coast of the U.S. and into Canada by the end of the week here. So either way, we are going to be seeing some pretty significant impact for the Northeast, whether it makes landfall or not, but it's likely to make landfall near New England. So Henri looks obviously a lot better organized this afternoon. Still has a CDO forecast pattern, and there has been a hint of an eye evidence in visible satellite imagery. So they're saying here, but the storm does not appear quite as well organized in the low levels, and the vortex is still tilted southward with height. Let's actually see the action ending with the actual ridge pattern, which is actually the reasoning why this will kind of, there we go. This general northward motion should continue through the weekend as another ridge builds to the east of Henri over the northwest Atlantic. This model is continued to the westward shift here. So basically, I'll explain what all that means and why that's happening a little bit later in the video. So this is looking at, I believe this is the latest recon that actually went into Grace, and you kind of see there we have 997, 996 millibars there. Pretty good low circulation. Actually, that may or may not be I think that's actually not the correct one. So obviously, there you see we do have a recon, which is now basically in the eastern Gulf of Mexico heading for Grace at this moment. There is the latest one. So there you see 994 millibars. So I was kind of thinking, why is there 995, 996 when it's 992? So there you see this recon just passed not too long ago, just before the 5 o'clock advisory came out, and you can kind of see we had a ton of areas that were supporting really a flight level basically up to nearly 80 knots here. So there was definitely some really strong strengthening winds on the northern quadrant and as well in the northeastern quadrant. It looks like obviously the low level circulation is kind of more towards at this point more towards obviously the west at this point, but this is where recon was. This is where the low level circulation was. So it actually looks like the rather northern portion of the low pressure is actually quite strong and not just the northeast quadrant. So it's something to keep a very close eye on and whether this expands here. But overall, keeping a very close eye on this low level circulation. This thing has a pretty good core. I would show ASCAP, but if I show ASCAP for all of these, it's just going to be too long of a video. And let me actually show you guys here the actual information we actually have from this recon. So there you see at flight level, or surface winds, sorry, not flight level, surface winds, they actually picked up on 70 knots here, which is exactly why it was increased to 80 miles an hour, and that was obviously a 10-second peak, I believe so. And then, I mean, as well, it looks like here we had almost 75 knots there in flight level, so basically 85-ish, very close to 90 miles an hour, basically, so that is quite interesting as well. Pressure as well dropped significantly there, we actually had only around 995 actually being verified here, but obviously there was recons that supported less than that, 992. And you kind of see some pretty good increase in temperature and dew points, so overall some pretty good temperature gradients around the actual low circulation, so not shabby whatsoever at all. This is definitely getting a lot better organized, and there is a chance it could still rapidly intensify, especially at this rate. We're really increasing in speed, or not speed, sorry, within strength. And I don't remember exactly what it was exactly 24 hours ago. When did I make my video? I think Grace was 7, or no, I think Grace was 65. 24 hours ago. I'm not exactly sure. It was either 65 or 70, but I think it was 65. Wow, I really don't remember. So either way, this thing has strengthened. It's either strengthened 10 miles an hour or 15 miles an hour in the past 24 hours, which is obviously not even close to rapid intensification, but it's obviously a pretty good start. So here's a look at the full out satellite imagery here on Hurricane Grace, and this is an absolute beauty here. You can kind of see there's that low level circulation, about to point it out. It's basically right here in that big blob of convection there. You see that kind of CDO where we had that pretty big hot towers and really, really cold cloud tops. That's where we're seeing that low level circulation. See some pretty, you can kind of see the outflow boundary kind of forming along the actual western quadrant there, and see some pretty strong inflow. We are seeing some pretty strong inflow. This is not. I think there is a teeny little bit of dry air trying to sneak in its way, but overall it's looking pretty good there. There you see the good low pressure, a lot of inflow as well. Overall, some pretty good structure. And there you see the ULAC, the upper level anticyclone. There you see that's exactly why we see some cumulus kind of stretching out like that, kind of from the south and to the north, kind of really spurting out like that. That's exactly what that ULAC is, kind of protecting it from the touch here, which is obviously to the northwest of the system right now. And it's definitely getting actually a lot of structure. And this one as well looks like a pretty good supercell, like what Grace looked like, or not, what Henri looked like yesterday. Henri looked like a supercell yesterday, the structure. And there you see the deep convection of Grace as well. It's kind of taking that very similar structure as well. So we kind of seen a lot of storms like that so far the past few days, or the past few weeks. I think I should say that, because I think even Fred looked like that just a teeny little bit, as well as it gathered strength and all of that. But overall, Grace is starting to look really good overall. A pretty strong core. We're starting to obviously some really strong vorticity, counterclockwise vorticity on the surface, and as well the more divergent upper air or mid level clockwise, which is obviously why you're seeing those cumulus clouds kind of stretch out like that clockwise, and then you see these really deep convection going kind of clockwise. It's exactly what you're seeing those two directions in, and that's obviously showing that Soren has a pretty good environment. Conducive environment is going to continue to become very conducive as it goes closer to Yucatan. Really deep ocean heat content overall, so this thing's going to continue to look a lot better structure wise as we get to tonight. And I want to show you guys weather nerds the weather nerds IR, or not IR, sorry, satellite imagery, because it actually has a temperature forecast on it, or the actual current SSTs, and you kind of see we're seeing areas of basically 30.5 degrees Celsius, and this low pressure is about to go over that 30.5 degrees Celsius mark. I mean, that's extremely warm waters, and although it's not moving the slowest, it's not moving the fastest. I mean, it's decent. I mean, it's going 16 miles an hour, so it's kind of, I guess, fast. But considering all of this ocean heat content's kind of accumulating and kind of eating up in like a vacuum, it's kind of really taking all that things on the ground, where the water is kind of sucking all that really warm water and that deep ocean heat content and all that energy stored in the warm waters, and it's eating all that up, which is why rapid intensification can't be ruled as a possibility. But at this rate, it's got to slow down a little bit more for it to actually be more likely, because I believe it's past the deepest ocean heat content areas. But overall, it's looking pretty good. It's a really good conducive environment. So here's a look here at the actual cone forecast, and you can see overall a really large wind field for Grace here. I mean, even some tropical storm winds sustained just south of Cuba there. We do still have some tropical storm watch there, and even some warning remaining there for portions there of Cuba. I'm not sure if that's actually Jamaica or part of Cuba, those little islands. I'm not sure even if it's its own country. I really not good with that region. But yeah, hurricane warnings remain there, as we're looking at a pretty good landfall and strong landfall for portions of the Yucatan Peninsula there. Obviously, there is a quote unquote, what was it? Well, I forgot what it said. I forgot what the quote was for the storm surge on the discussion, but it was something about storm surge, how it's very dangerous and all that. So we're definitely looking at for some pretty intense storm surge overall. And it's going to weaken into a tropical storm. So tropical storm warnings have been issued for the rest of portions of Yucatan and into the Campeche region. And we can back to a tropical storm over the Bay of Campeche as it goes over the land, a lot of land, obviously. And then obviously going to strengthen back to a hurricane, but a little bit weaker, as it does have a little bit less timing than obviously where it is in the open waters like that. It's going to be limited in the Bay of Campeche as it forms kind of midway, not right after. This were a lot stronger, maybe like 100 at landfall. It would definitely be a pretty strong over on the Bay of Campeche. But looking at a landfall there for portions there of the western side of the Bay of Campeche region, so looking at some pretty overall, keeping a very close eye on there. Would not doubt if we start getting some hurricane, or actually, I wouldn't doubt if we get tropical storm warnings already, kind of all the way like here, and some hurricane warnings very soon here. I think within 24 hours or so, we will see hurricane warnings for that part of the Bay of Campeche if consistency remains. As well, ocean heat content, like I said, it's really dense here. Actually, there's another big bubble kind of towards Yucatan. It's about to go through that massive bubble, really deep ocean heat content. So it's gonna be very interesting how that plays out as well. Like I said, it kind of really went through the deepest part of Jamaica. That's where obviously got a good amount of strength, but it's gonna about to go through a really large bubble at this point. So it could very well really start for intensification right before Yucatan. We will see, but water height though, or wave height is pretty large as well. We're going to see as well 25-foot waves within Grace, and it's definitely going to be a lot larger once it gets stronger. So watching out to be a big factor for that pretty significant storm surge for Mexico. And so the guidance here, a lot of models when I have it getting to a pretty strong Category 1, possibly 80 knots, which is obviously close to maybe around 95 miles an hour, which is not possible. You can't have 95. And then weekends, and actually there's a little bit more models that are actually suggesting it does not go back to tropical storm. So if that were to happen, it would definitely become a lot stronger in the Bay of Campeche, possibly back to 80 or maybe 85, maybe even 90, but gotta keep a very close eye on it. So here's looking at the actual look now satellite for Henri, and it's looking as well pretty good. Kind of more look like just a fat area of just convection, like it's always been looking. So it's not like the greatest. However, it does have to be a lot more organized, I guess, blob structure, I guess I'd say. Then you can kind of see as well those kind of cumulus kind of as well spreading out to the north as well to the southward. Obviously going clockwise, those cumulus that are stretching out, so seeing as well a ULAC or upper level anticyclone as well embedded within the system. You can kind of see it's not moving too much. It's moving, obviously, I believe, was it west 9 miles an hour, so it's going to start going westward, or it's going to kind of start dipping like this a little bit. It's going to kind of move a lot further away from Bermuda, so Bermuda should not get much of the wind as we thought when it was going to turn like that. So it's going to probably, I'm not sure if Bermuda even has their tropical storm watches anymore at this point. I once probably cancel the warnings probably by the next update, or the watches, sorry. Or actually, never mind, the watches are no longer there. Actually, yeah, the low pressure's way down there. So yeah, the watches are gone for Bermuda, which is obviously a rather good idea. But look at this cone here, tropics from landfall for Cape Cod in Massachusetts, and as well look at New York City. New York City, somehow, we would have never thought this, but somehow New York City is in the cone. The reason why you see kind of this side is really, this side's kind of really normal. You can kind of see not much of a big fat jump out all of a sudden. But this side, on the western side, you see like a random big jump like that. It's because the storm, we kind of have an idea it's going to go like this. The thing is, we don't know if it's going to go like that towards New York City or like that towards New England. And I think most likely it's going to hit either Rhode Island or Massachusetts, if I'm being honest. And then obviously Rhode Island's kind of right in the middle. So either way, Rhode Island is going to get hit quite hard, whether it's going to be kind of in the northeast quadrant if it goes for Long Island, or right on the very edge if it hits Massachusetts. You know, it's either Rhode Island's going to get hit dead on, going to get the outer walls, or it's going to get hit by the northeast quadrant. So it's kind of Rhode Island in the really big middle there. And there's the wind field's obviously a lot smaller than Grace, but looking at a tropical storm here until really tomorrow afternoon, and then looking at a hurricane to form possibly by tomorrow or Friday morning here overnight from tomorrow night. And then it's going to obviously kind of go westward because of that latest ridge there, and obviously as it gets stronger, the system is going to start pulling more westward because of that ridge impact, kind of keeping it from going northeast and eastward, obviously, or even southwest. So it's going to kind of just go due west, and now obviously as this Bermuda High gets a lot closer, let's say kind of right here, so it's going to start bringing in that strong trade winds that it typically brings, obviously, the counterclockwise though, obviously a high pressure is counterclockwise, so it's going to bring in that wind kind of picking up, so it's basically so close, it's not going to kind of go westward like that, because of obviously that's something you kind of see more in a high pressure that's kind of really far to the east here. But this is quite close here, very close to the storm, so it's going to pick it up north like that, and that's going to allow for this huge northern turn. The thing is, will the ridge still impact it later on? And that's why we have so much uncertainty here for the northeast here. But either way, we do have an idea. It is going to go due north and head towards the United States. So since there's so much uncertainty within Henri, I decided to look at the GFS, European CMC ensembles for Henri specifically. So here's look at the GEFS ensemble. And GEFS is definitely far more west than any other global model we're actually looking at, including the European here. So there you see a pretty far western turn according to the GEFS. Obviously, kind of more the GFS front. Well, other models kind of have it going like this. But GEFS really has it making landfall actually for Cape Cod, very similar to what the National Hurricane Center is showing. and skidding portions of Boston, then going up the main coast. It's kind of just skidding the New England region basically, and we have a ton of ensembles as well. Here's the actual mean itself. This is the mean of this. This is actually the mean. So the mean's actually not heading towards New England, but the majority actually, or if you look at the more average, are actually kind of towards the west of the mean than to the east here. So it's definitely keeping a very, very close eye on that. But let's look at let's look at the differences between the GFS and other models. So here's now a look here at the European here for Henri. See, oops, that's not gonna work. I'm not sure what I thought. The European is really a lot less intense here within that due north turn, actually kind of having just go northeast here instead of going due north like that. So that's something that the European wants to have. And still a lot are kind of having on the eastern side, however, definitely not having it kind of go as far west, but still a few are getting it towards Massachusetts and New England. But obviously a lot less are taking it there. And the mean is a whole lot further off the coast. CMC as well is kind of somewhat agreeing with the European. That's great. There we go. But the CMC is kind of really not having anything touch New England. Just a few models, 3 or 4, that are kind of having it there within the 1,000 millibars or so. But that's not really a threat as of now because the CMC's really been not consistent whatsoever. GFS has been quite consistent. A few models aren't necessarily quite consistent, but that's just obviously the process here. With there's really a lot of uncertainty within this storm here. Concerning the overall condition, and Henri with the overall forecast, a ton of models are kind of having still to the east of the actual United States, but still a lot more are getting it a lot closer. So still seeing that western shift. So here's a look here at the tropics from Henri forecast, and obviously it's likely to become a hurricane within the next 36 hours or so. And actually, there is a pretty big jump here. The peak will most likely be within 84 hours. Let's go all the way from the biggest model, which is, I believe, what is that? That's the H4, of course the H4 wants to have category 4. Sorry, category 3. I'm not sure why I got 4 from. The category 3 major hurricane. So you kind of see the peak is basically within just 3 days or so. That's kind of where the crest, the big climax is right there. So look at that 3 days for the peak here. And we have actually a good amount are getting it towards category 2, and a good, obviously, the majority are having it towards a category 1. So we're looking at maybe anywhere from 90 miles an hour to maybe anywhere from 100 miles an hour. So category 2 can't be ruled out the possibility, especially since the peak is 90 already. It only needs 10 more miles an hour. Sorry, not 10 more miles an hour. Yeah, 10 more miles an hour to get to category 2. I'm not sure why I was thinking 110. That's obviously like the max category 2. But yeah, it's definitely it's definitely a possibility. It could become a brief category 2, not really long term or anything like that. Could be like a 3 advisory thing or something like that, where it's not going to be a super long category 2, or not going to be like a Paulette or anything like that. But it's definitely going to be extremely interesting what it does within the next few days. Obviously, the peak's looking for 3 days or so. So overall, keeping a very, very close eye on for the Friday/Saturday time frame. Here's a look here at the actual GFS run here, so you can kind of see good storms. Obviously, there's Henri, and there's Grace. So for some reason, the GFS has 998 millibars for Grace. I'm not sure why that's the case, because obviously it's just going to keep getting stronger. It's already 992. But actually within 6 hours they actually have Henri at 994, it's 995 right now, so they have it strengthening. I mean, the GFS is quite behind on Grace as it's continuing to really get its act together, because it's still within 12 hours only 994, and it's already 982. So GFS is a little bit behind here. So I think 18 is going to be a little bit more intense with the Yucatan landfall than the 12Z. But here's look at the next 30 hours or so. So the 30 hours, actually the landfall for Yucatan is going to be within the next 24 hours or so. So tomorrow around this time, maybe a little bit earlier here, maybe around 20-ish, 21 hours or now, we're going to be watching out for landfall in Yucatan. Will I be streaming that? We will see. I most likely maybe will decide to make a stream here on the landfall for Mexico, and then have a discussion on Henri. We will see how it plays out tomorrow. And then obviously within 48 hours, Grace will be back in the middle of the Bay of Campeche. It's going to start regaining strength. And within 48 hours, we're going to start seeing here now that ridge, kind of really strong ridge associated right here within the Bermuda High, is going to start pushing that really far westward. And that's obviously, this will be the same ridge as it gets a little bit further east or west, where you kind of see kind of pushes west like that, really far west. and it's extremely close to the system. It's going to push it north because of that. It's going to kind of do this, basically, like that. It's going to do that with the clockwise spin. And at the same time here, 66 hours from now, they're 972 millibars landfall for Bay of Campeche. So look at that, really intense. Maybe we may or may not see rapid intensification there after the first landfall. We will see how that plays out, though. And then you see the peak here. Let's get the peak forecast. There, the peak is 78 hours at 966. Actually, never mind. That's not the peak. The peak has really gone a lot stronger. They have the peak at 84 hours. So it's within 72 or 84 hours is where we will be seeing here. Where we'll be seeing the peak time frame is kind of where we'll be watching out for. What was I going to say? For Henri. I keep mixing up the names here. For Henri, 964 millibars. I'm kind of scared to look at the 10-meter winds here. And then heads for the Northeast. I mean, this is just crazy what they show for the Northeast here. And look at that. They want to have a 900, have it approaching the Northeast at 979 millibars. Let's just go look at the 10-meter winds here. I mean, look at that. I mean, the GFS will have to do like a Sandy 2.0, basically. I mean, that's just absolutely mental what they want from these systems here. But look at that. This is quite intimidating. If you're in the Northeast, you're typically not used to this at all. Typically, storms come as like the weak tropical storms, like kind of what we saw with Faye and Isaias, or they're post-tropical, like we see with other storms here. But this is definitely not something we have not seen in a while. I don't want to point the name out, but we all know the letter S 2012. This is very similar track. I wouldn't say it's very similar, but the whole starts to steer east or westward last minute and heading for New York. Obviously, this would be way north compared to Sandy, but I mean, I don't want to compare this to Sandy just because of the strength in the area. Again, like I said, I'm not comparing to Sandy. I'm just saying we haven't seen something like this intensity and location since Sandy, basically. And Sandy was obviously a very unique track, and it's obviously very unique pattern we're seeing right now with the whole ridge and all that. So I definitely do not think it's going to be that strength at landfall. I think maybe 990-ish, maybe a little weaker, maybe 995. But that's definitely, the area is definitely a little bit weird because they have it so strong that they have it going towards New York City, downtown New York City. But I think it's obviously going to probably go for Rhode Island, Connecticut, or even New England in general. I think that's the best way to put it there. But that's definitely interesting what the GFS wants to have. Actually, I want to kind of go very zoomed in here to get an idea of what they have 10 meters for the actual peak. Let's see this, how they have it evolving. So, I mean, this is obviously I want to see 10 meter as well. So, look how weak the GFS has. God, I still can't get with the name Grace. I mean, it's already 80 miles an hour, and they are really slacking a lot here. 12Z, but look at I'm not sure what they're doing there with Grace. Let's actually not going to look at the H Wharf. I've actually forgot to pull up the H Wharf, so let's actually check Grace first for the H Wharf and go to. Actually, let's just skip the wind or the radar. Let's just go straight to the winds here. So let's go to 10-meter winds and see what they have. Let's go all the way back and see. I'm actually kind of scared to see what the H Wharf has because I have not checked so far, and they're also behind. They have it in 3 hours. 994, 980 within 12 hours, 973 within 18 hours, making landfall in 21 hours as 967 millibars. But it's only 90 knots. So that's what, like 105 miles an hour. Considering that 967 is pretty dang low for something like that, for a category 2 like that. Then obviously, the H-Wharf has kind of calmed down a lot within the peak strength because they were showing 940s, 950s, and now they're only getting 968. So that's obviously a little bit more reasonable. Well, I'm not saying that's reasonable, but it's a lot more reasonable than the 943, the 922 they had at some point. So, I mean, H-Wharf is evolving a little bit, I guess you could say that. Let's not look at the actually reasoning for why this weird kind of track is expected or by all of that. So, obviously the big factor to why this is going to start steering west. No, west. It's because that really strong kind of ridge right here. And then you kind of see the trough down here and then the ridge again. So you see the high pressure, the low pressure down here. So it's kind of a really strong ridge and you see the trough down here that is preventing it from going anywhere up past this line. Anything past this line it's not going to go to. It's just not possible. It's going to get killed. And the steering, since Henri is getting quite strong quite quickly, the ridge slash and the trough obviously will have a lot more of a steering effect, and that's going to help push it west, where you can, it's so strong it pushes it west to prevent it from killing it. Obviously, the U-lock will prevent any vertical shear damage. There's the low pressure, there's the high pressure along that ridge. Same thing up here, another high pressure. You kind of see the nice kind of dip like that, and actually it's going to help develop a TUTT eventually. And then a big factor to why it's going to start going due north is because how close to high pressure gets, see how really close it gets. And that's going to kind of go like that, picking up north like that. Because it's so close to the trade winds and all that. And that's going to help go take it northwest, or northern, actually. And that's why the GFS is taking it toward New York City, because it's a lot stronger, like 971, something like that. So it's gonna go further westward before the northern turn. And that's why they have it doing the way it is. But hope you guys enjoyed the video, and see you guys later.